The coffee was still steaming when 3 coworkers poured it over Evelyn Hart in front of the Mafia boss. They laughed as it soaked her dusty rose blouse and the routing binder she had protected for 6 years. Lucinda Vale called her the coffee girl and ordered her to clean the table before the decision-makers arrived. Dante Moretti let Evelyn leave, believing she was only another assistant who could be replaced by morning. Then his payroll froze. 3 security teams received impossible orders, and Lucinda tried to seize the ruined binder. Beneath one coffee-stained page, Evelyn found the edge of a hidden sheet and a trail that could cost Dante his empire at the next evening's vote. She had 18 hours, a flight out of the city, and one choice no one in that room believed she was powerful enough to make. Evelyn did not reach for a napkin. She placed both hands on the conference table and waited for the laughter to fade on its own. Coffee ran from the edge of her blouse onto the polished walnut, carrying a thin brown line toward Dante Moretti's untouched briefing folder. Marla Quinn stepped back with the empty carafe still tilted in her hand. Dean Cross covered his mouth, but not quickly enough to hide his grin. Lucinda Vale remained seated at Dante's right, immaculate in gray silk, watching Evelyn as if the humiliation were another item she had approved. "You heard me," Lucinda said. "Clean the table and bring us a usable binder." Evelyn looked down at the master routing book pressed beneath her palm. Its pages had swollen, but the metal rings were closed and the numbered tabs were still intact. That mattered more than the blouse. "Marla poured it," Evelyn said. Lucinda smiled without warmth. "And you're the assistant assigned to this room." For 6 years, that sentence had ended every argument. Evelyn corrected invoices, repaired schedules, and stopped payroll errors before they became family emergencies. When the work succeeded, Lucinda presented the result. When someone failed, Evelyn received the file. Dante glanced at his watch. "The succession briefing begins in 12 minutes. He spoke to Lucinda, not Evelyn. "Replace the damaged book." Evelyn lifted the binder carefully. "There is no replacement copy." "There are departmental copies," Evelyn replied. "This is the master sequence showing which order supersedes the others. Reconstructing it will take 11 hours, assuming no one altered the sequence." "Then stop dramatizing and begin." Evelyn met Dante's gaze. He had watched 3 people reduce her to a servant, then measured the delay instead of the damage. "Go," he said. Evelyn carried the binder out without cleaning the table. No one asked Evelyn whether the coffee had burned her. In the operations room, she replaced her wet cardigan with a spare black jacket and placed the binder beneath 2 desk fans. Her phone began vibrating before she finished separating the first pages. The North Pier supervisor reported that his night team had been reassigned to the Moretti Hotel. The hotel security captain insisted the same team was scheduled for the river warehouse. 30 seconds later, payroll called about a payment batch that had failed final authorization. Evelyn opened her calendar and checked the approval windows. None of those failures should have been possible at the same time. Each order passed through a different department, but all 3 depended on the master routing sequence in front of her. She stopped both security teams because neither order carried a valid sequence number. By the time she reached payroll, someone had locked her out of the vendor approval screen. Evelyn tried once more, then wrote the time on a yellow legal pad. Access removed at 9:17 a.m. Only Dante, Lucinda, and the security administrator could suspend her credentials. A knock sounded at the glass door, where Marla waited with a dry blouse and an order from Lucinda. "Lucinda wants the binder," Marla said. "Then she can put that instruction in writing." Marla's smile disappeared. "You think Mr. Moretti will choose you over his chief of staff? I think you damaged the only master record required for tonight's review." Marla's smile vanished. She closed the door. Minutes later, Dante's driver appeared on 2 routing sheets while 4 vendor payments entered an emergency queue Evelyn had never approved. The pattern was not random failure. Someone was creating conflicts faster than she could resolve them, and they had waited until the master binder was damaged to begin. Dante emerged from the conference room with Lucinda behind him. "Why is North Pier refusing an order from my office?" Evelyn turned her legal pad toward him. "Because your office issued 3 incompatible orders without sequence numbers. She has been locked out for damaging the master record." "I did not damage it. You were responsible for it." Dante read the times on the pad. "Who suspended her access?" "I did, until we determine whether the records are compromised." "They are compromised," Evelyn said. "On what authority are you making that claim?" Evelyn pointed to the 3 orders. "The authority of knowing that Dante cannot leave the hotel at 7:40, inspect North Pier at 7:45, and arrive at the river warehouse at 7:52. Dante's expression hardened. "Restore her access." Lucinda hesitated, and both Evelyn and Dante saw it. Now, he said. Dante's attention settled on Evelyn's damp hair and the reddened skin near her collar. Were you burned? Not seriously. Why didn't you report the routing conflicts before the meeting? I reported smaller versions of them 3 times last month. To whom? Evelyn looked past him at Lucinda. Dante followed her gaze. For years, he had assumed Lucinda's department produced the clean schedules Evelyn quietly repaired. His phone rang, and the payroll director reported 40 accounts awaiting final authorization. How long to stop it? 20 minutes if my access is restored. And if it isn't, 40 employees wake up tomorrow without pay. Fix it. Evelyn did not touch the keyboard. Ask me. Dante stared at her as though no employee had ever corrected the shape of his command. You allowed your staff to humiliate me. Blamed me for the damage and removed my access while expecting me to save the system, she said. If you want my professional judgment, ask for it. Something changed in his face, not softness, but recognition. Will you stop the payment batch, Evelyn? Yes. Her credentials returned at 9:41. She canceled the false queue, restored the original payroll sequence, and sent numbered confirmations to all 3 security teams. The crisis eased in 18 minutes. No one applauded, and Evelyn preferred it that way. When the final confirmation arrived, she returned to the damp binder. Dante stood on the other side of the desk while Lucinda watched from the hall. One swollen page near the vendor section curled upward beneath the fan. Evelyn reached to flatten it, then stopped. The page was not curling from water alone. Its lower edge had been cut cleanly and fixed over another sheet with a narrow line of adhesive. Coffee had softened the glue. Beneath the false page, a second routing order was beginning to show. Lucinda saw it at the same moment Evelyn did. Give me that binder, she said. Evelyn closed both hands around the binder. No. Lucinda entered the operations room as if the refusal had been spoken in a language beneath her. That record belongs to this office. Then this office can preserve it properly. Evelyn lifted the loose edge with the tip of a letter opener but did not separate the pages. The hidden sheet bore the blue routing grid Evelyn had designed, while the false page lacked her revision mark. Lucinda reached across the desk. Dante caught her wrist before she touched the binder. He released her at once, but his meaning was clear. No one handles it until I know what I'm looking at. Lucinda drew herself upright. You're looking at paper damaged by a careless employee. Marla poured the coffee, Dante said. It was the first time he had stated the fact aloud. Marla lowered her eyes beyond the glass wall. Dante turned to her. What do you need? A clean table, gloves, the fans, and everyone who has authority over this binder outside the room. Lucinda gave a short laugh. You cannot exclude the chief of staff from an internal review. I can exclude anyone who demanded the evidence 30 seconds after discovering it existed. The air changed. Dean stopped smiling. Dante looked from Evelyn to Lucinda. Wait in the conference room. Dante, this is absurd. Then it should take her very little time to prove it. Lucinda pressed her thumb against her ring, a habit Evelyn recognized from questions she had not prepared for. Lucinda walked out without another word. Dante locked the glass door after her and placed the key beside Evelyn instead of keeping it. He was placing control of the room in her hands. Evelyn put on the gloves and examined the exposed corner. The upper sheet was added after the binder was assembled. How can you tell? The master pages are punched before receiving routing numbers, but this hole was cut after printing. Dante leaned closer but did not touch it. Why glue it down? To preserve the page count. Removing the original would expose a gap, so covering it preserved the page count while replacing the order beneath it. You notice that in less than a minute. I built the filing sequence. Lucinda told me her department built it. Lucinda's department presented it. Dante stepped back. What else did she present as hers? Evelyn continued working. That question will take longer than tonight's vote allows. Using a thin plastic divider, she eased the pages apart until the original routing order lay exposed. The order assigned North Pier Team 2 to the Succession Hotel from 6 that evening until 2 the next morning. The false page redirected the same team to the River Warehouse at 7:30. Below the change sat an emergency vendor code, V19. V19 should not be on a security route, she said. What is it? A temporary facilities vendor approved after last winter's pipe failure. Who approved it? The request came through the Chief of Staff's office, but the binder must establish the approval path before I name anyone. What can it establish now? That someone replaced an authorized security order with one routing man away from the hotel and used a facilities vendor code to do it. Could it be clerical error? Not after the page was glued down. Dean tested the locked door with a folder against his chest. Mr. Moretti, Lucinda says the board attorney needs you. Dante did not look away from Evelyn. Tell the attorney I will come when Evelyn finishes. Dean's gaze found the vendor code, and the color left his face. Ask him to leave the folder, she said. Dean gripped it tighter. This is privileged material. Dante unlocked the door but blocked the entrance with his body. Give me the folder, Dean. Dean glanced toward the conference room instead of answering. Dante took the folder and relocked the door. Inside was a printed suspension notice bearing Evelyn's name. It accused her of destroying protected records and interfering with security operations, with a signature line waiting for Dante. Efficient, Evelyn said. She prepared my guilt before anyone examined the page. Dante set the notice aside. You don't sound surprised. Being blamed is the most consistent process in this office. I allowed that process. Evelyn looked at him. Yes, she said. He accepted the answer without defending himself. Your shoulder is getting redder. It will settle. I need 10 uninterrupted minutes more than I need ointment. He nodded and silenced his phone. Evelyn examined the lower half of the original page. 3 approval initials ran beside the altered root. The first belonged to Marla. The second belonged to Dean. The third looked like Lucinda's authorization mark, but one stroke had been drawn backward. That isn't her signature, Dante said. No. Evelyn tilted the page toward the light. It's an internal authorization symbol, and only 5 people know how to use it. You are one of them. So are you and Lucinda. Who are the other 2? The security administrator and your former deputy chief of staff. Dante's eyes hardened at the last title. His former deputy had defected to the Belandi family 8 months earlier. You think this leads outside my organization. I think someone wants you to believe it does. She turned back to the false page. The adhesive had preserved a faint pressure mark where someone had written on the sheet while it rested over the original. Evelyn read the indented numbers sideways beneath the lamp. 730, V19, and the initials DC, Dean Cross. She looked through the glass wall. Dean was no longer waiting outside. Neither was Lucinda. Evelyn reached for the key Dante had left beside her. The handle turned before she touched it. Someone on the other side had another key. Dante moved between Evelyn and the door. Who is there? He asked. No one answered. Footsteps retreated across the carpet. Dante opened the door and found only a brass service key marked with the red thread of the assistant's cabinet. That belongs to the executive assistant's cabinet. Who can sign it out? Marla, Dean, Lucinda, and me. Where's your key? She pointed to the one beside the binder. Dean may want us to follow him, or someone wants us to think he came back. Evelyn closed the binder without moving the false page. Either way, this room is no longer secure. Dante ordered guards to the corridor while Evelyn placed the binder inside a document case. That stays with me, he said. No. Someone just tried to enter this room. My response is to protect it. Protection without access leaves me unable to prove anything. What do you propose? The case stays in your secure office, and the access code requires both of us. Shared custody, shared accountability. He nodded, allowing her to shape the decision rather than merely execute it. They crossed the corridor together while Lucinda watched from the far end beside the board attorney. Where are your assistants? Dante asked. I sent them to correct the confusion Evelyn caused. You will call them back. Lucinda's gaze moved to the document case. The board is gathering early. The vote is at 8. It has been moved to 6. That placed the vote 30 minutes after the false security routes took effect. Who authorized the change? She asked. The board chair, after receiving reports that tonight's security plan is unstable. Reports from your office, Evelyn said. Reports based on your damaged records. Evelyn asked you a question. Lucinda's mouth tightened. Yes, my office provided the report. The sequence was clear. Create conflicting routes, damage the record, blame its keeper, then advance the vote. I need the current board packet, Evelyn said. Dante held out his hand, received the packet, and gave it to Evelyn without opening it. Lucinda stared as the material passed beyond her control. Inside Dante's office, they secured the binder and examined the board packet. Page 14 described the security conflict as evidence of leadership negligence. Page 15 authorized an emergency oversight vote if the hotel operated below minimum coverage. It named rival Representative Adrian Belandi as the recipient of temporary authority over shared port operations. They want the board to believe Belandi engineered this, Evelyn said. He would benefit, too visibly. A real takeover hides the beneficiary until control is secure. And you know that from scheduling meetings. The question held skepticism but not contempt. I know it from watching people request rooms they claim they will not enter. Belandi's name guarantees everyone looks outside your organization while someone inside controls the reports, the routes, and the timing. Dante leaned over the desk but left space between them. Who inside? The binder can answer that if we preserve the chain and compare the initials. You already suspect Lucinda. Suspicion is not authority. Most people here would give me a name just to keep me pleased. That is why they are dangerous to you. Then his attention fell to the red mark above her collar. He placed burn gel on the desk and stepped back. Your 10 minutes are over. Evelyn almost smiled. Ask, will you use it? Yes. He turned toward the window while she treated the burn, offering privacy without abandoning the evidence. Dante's phone rang again. The hotel captain reported that teams 4 and 6 were already moving away from the hotel. Minimum coverage would fail at 5:30, 30 minutes before the advanced vote. Lucinda does not need anyone hurt. She needs the hotel to appear unprotected, and payroll to remain unstable long enough for employees to complain to the board. Both captains refused to reverse orders bearing valid internal authorization. They will not reverse without proof, he said. A system that depends on your voice alone can be stolen by anyone who imitates it. She opened the document case with him and returned to the hidden sheet. The contingency box on the false page transferred emergency authority to Lucinda's office. She gave herself authority after creating the emergency, Evelyn said. Can you reverse it? I can issue a correction, but she will call it a forgery. Then use my authority, Evelyn shook her head. That proves only that you overruled her. We use the binder's authority. She dictated a correction from the unchanged master number, and Dante signed beneath her professional finding. Teams 4 and 6 turned back at 2:18. Hotel coverage would remain intact. Dante looked at the signed correction. How many times have you saved this organization without my knowing? Enough times that everyone expected me to do it silently. That ends today. The office door opened before Evelyn could respond. Lucinda entered with the board attorney and 2 security officers. Mr. Moretti, the attorney said, the ethics committee has received evidence that Miss Hart created V19 and used it to manipulate protected routes. Lucinda placed a personnel form on the desk. Evelyn's employee number appeared beside the V19 vendor request. For the integrity of the vote, Lucinda said, she must be suspended and removed from the hotel. Dante did not look at the form. He looked at Evelyn. Is that your number? Yes. Did you create V19? I entered the original facilities request after Lucinda authorized it. There is always an explanation when Evelyn is caught. Protecting Evelyn without evidence would let Lucinda claim Dante was compromised, while surrendering her would leave the binder inside a corrupted system. Dante opened the document case, removed Evelyn's suspension notice, and tore the unsigned page once through the middle. She is not under arrest, and she is not your scapegoat, he said. Then he turned to Evelyn. But until the vote, you cannot remain my employee and challenge this record independently. Evelyn heard the distinction before Lucinda did. Dante placed her purse and coat in her hands. You are released from every obligation to me, with full pay and no restriction on where you go. The open door waited behind her. Evelyn took the coat but left the door open. Is this another order? No, Dante said. It is the first choice I should have given you this morning. Dante instructed the officers to escort Evelyn only if she requested it, then handed her the key to the document case. The binder remains under shared custody until you decide otherwise. If I leave, it stays with you, and it will not be opened without your code. You are giving a dismissed assistant control over evidence in a succession inquiry. Dante turned his head. I am preventing my chief of staff from controlling evidence that implicates her office. Evelyn looked at Dante. He had protected her choice without demanding loyalty as payment. I need 5 minutes alone with the binder before I go. Take them. He cleared the room, including himself. Evelyn reviewed the coffee-stained pages and marked only the sequence the binder already proved. At 2:46, she locked the case and placed the key on Dante's desk. He waited in the corridor without guards beside him. Your code still holds, he said. Why? Because releasing you from employment did not erase your authority over the work. You did not believe I had authority this morning. I was wrong this morning. What will you do if I don't return? She asked. Tell the board the truth I can prove, accept the consequences of what I failed to see, and keep your name out of any claim I cannot support. And Lucinda? She will receive due process, not the kind of public punishment she arranged for you. Evelyn nodded once. She walked to the elevator. Dante did not follow. Her suitcase was already in the trunk of the sedan she had booked before dawn. At 3:05, Evelyn signed the final page of an employment offer from Lakefront Meridian Logistics. The director of operations position included independent hiring authority and a salary free of the Moretti family. Her flight left at 5:10. The driver pulled away from the hotel. Evelyn imagined a clean desk where no one called her the coffee girl. Her phone rang from an unfamiliar internal extension. She almost ignored it. Then she recognized the last 4 digits as the payroll emergency line. "Evelyn, it's Martin," the director said. "I know you were released, but the 40 accounts are frozen again. I cleared them at 9:59. The system accepted the correction, then scheduled a second hold for 6:05. 5 minutes after the advanced vote. What reason does it show? Emergency vendor reconciliation under V19. The vendor was designed to keep payroll unstable until the board transferred authority. The missing salaries were a timed complaint against his leadership. Can you cancel it? Not without the master sequence or authorization from Lucinda's office." The driver asked whether she wanted him to continue to the airport. The signed offer and the flight were both real. 40 workers would still wake without pay if Lucinda controlled the vote, and Evelyn's employee number would remain on the requests that hurt them. She could choose safety, but innocent people would pay for Dante's failure. "Turn around," she said. The driver met her eyes in the mirror. "Back to the Moretti Hotel, back to the binder." At 3:42, Evelyn entered Dante's office using no employee badge and owing no one obedience. He rose when he saw her. The relief in his face appeared before his control returned. "Did someone stop you?" "No." "Did anyone threaten the contract?" "No." "Then why are you here?" "Because 40 employees are being used as evidence against you, and my number is the weapon." "You don't owe me this, I know. I need you to know that before you open the case. That is why I came back." They entered their codes together. Evelyn opened the binder to the V19 overlay and read the sequence from the opposite direction. This time she followed the timing backward from the vote. The security shortage began at 5:30. The vote began at 6. The payroll hold became final at 6:05. The temporary oversight order activated at 6:10. At 6:15, V19 lost emergency status and converted into a permanent port services vendor. Dante leaned beside her. Belandi gains the authority. On paper, Evelyn tapped the vendor conversion line. But V19 gains the contracts, and whoever controls V19 gains the ports after Belandi takes the blame. What looked like theft was a transfer of power timed to a manufactured leadership failure. "Lucinda does not want your money," Evelyn said. "She wants the system that decides where it moves. She has sat beside me for 9 years. That is her access path, and I gave it to her. Yes, tell me what you need, not what I need." Evelyn closed the binder. "Ask what the board needs to hear." Dante nodded. "What does the board need to hear?" "The sequence in this binder, explained by the person who built it, without Lucinda interrupting or you speaking for me. You will have the room." "I will have the room because the proof gives me authority, not because I belong to you. You do not belong to me. The decision is yours, Evelyn." She lifted the document case. "Then my decision is to finish this." At 5:47, the hotel boardroom doors opened. Lucinda stood at the head of the table with Marla and Dean seated behind the board attorney. Every person who had laughed looked away or accepted Evelyn's invisible work was present. An empty chair waited near the far wall, where assistants normally sat without speaking. Dante entered first but did not take the head seat. He pulled out the voting chair beside his own and looked at Evelyn. Lucinda's voice sharpened. "She has been dismissed and has no standing in this room." Dante rested one hand on the chair without answering for Evelyn. Evelyn placed the coffee-stained binder on the table. "Then let the board decide whether the person who built its evidence has standing to explain it." "Did you build the routing system under review?" "Yes," Evelyn said. The chair pointed to the voting seat beside Dante. "Then sit where we can hear you." Evelyn took the chair. Lucinda remained at the head of the table, but the room's attention no longer belonged to her. Evelyn opened the binder to the swollen vendor section. "This is the authorized master route for tonight's security coverage." This false page was cut after printing and glued over the original to preserve the binder's page count. She lifted the loosened edge without separating it. It redirected 3 teams away from this building through V19, a facilities vendor that had no authority over security. The chair leaned forward. Marla Quinn and Dean Cross entered the route under the Chief of Staff's authorization symbol. Marla rose abruptly. "She is lying because we reported her fraud. Your initials appear beneath the false route, not on a separate accusation prepared afterward. You could have written them. Then I would also have needed to create Dean's V19 pressure marks beneath the glued page. That does not prove Lucinda ordered anything," the attorney said. "Correct," Evelyn replied. Evelyn moved to the contingency box. "It proves her office received emergency authority after the false routes created the emergency. Security coverage fell below minimum at 5:30. The leadership vote began at 6. Payroll was scheduled to freeze at 6:05 through V19. Temporary Port Authority transferred at 6:10. At 6:15, V19 converted into a permanent port services vendor. The money was never the final target. The crisis was designed to remove Dante's operating authority, place the public blame on Adrian Belandi, and transfer the contracts to whoever controlled V19. The board chair looked at Lucinda. Who controls it? According to the request, Evelyn Hart created the vendor. I entered the original request, Evelyn said, because entering approved requests was my job. My employee number identifies the person who entered the record. The approval box identifies the office that requested it, controls its emergency status, and receives authority when the contingency activates. Your office. Lucinda's composure cracked. You were a secretary typing what you were told. Evelyn looked directly at her. That is why you used my number. You believed the person who kept the system running would never be permitted to explain how it worked. You poured coffee on her, Dante said to Marla. Evelyn turned toward him. Evelyn will finish. She returned to the binder. The coffee meant to humiliate me instead loosened the false page and preserved the marks beneath it. Marla and Dean did not ruin the evidence. They exposed it. Dean pushed back his chair. Lucinda said no one would lose money. Lucinda spun toward him. Sit down. She said Belandi would take control for one night, and we would be promoted when the vendor contracts cleared. His confession only confirmed the chain the binder had already proved. We were supposed to scare her out of the meeting. Evelyn wanted a system where cruelty could not hide behind a superior's title. The chair called for an immediate vote. Lucinda was removed as chief of staff, stripped of access, and referred for investigation into fraud and evidence tampering. Marla and Dean were terminated and referred to an independent review for harassment and falsified records. V19 was canceled, and all 40 employees received their wages before 6/5. You think he will keep respecting you once he no longer needs you? She asked Evelyn. Evelyn closed the binder. That is for him to prove and for me to decide. The officers escorted all 3 from the room without spectacle. Only after the doors closed did Dante rise. Before this board discusses my authority, it will discuss my failure. I treated reliability as something I was entitled to receive. I let Lucinda's title outweigh Evelyn's knowledge, and I measured inconvenience when Evelyn was humiliated. She saved this organization after I gave her every reason to leave it. The board chair placed a prepared governance amendment on the table. Dante slid the document toward Evelyn, but kept his hand away from the signature line. Independent Director of Operations, he said. A voting seat, vendor signature authority, audit access, and veto power over unverified security changes. You choose your staff and cannot be removed without independent review. Evelyn read every page. I can refuse any order that violates the charter. Agreed. I keep the right to leave without retaliation or surveillance. Dante met her gaze. Agreed. The lakefront contract remains valid until I decide. Agreed. Evelyn signed only after the board added every condition by recorded vote. The chair moved Lucinda's former voting folder to Evelyn's place. For 6 years, people had carried her solutions upward under their own names, but now the board waited for her decision. She was not the coffee girl. She was the authority they had failed to recognize. 3 weeks later, Evelyn wore a new dusty rose blouse while the binder rested inside a protected evidence cabinet. Payroll now required 2 independent approvals, and every security change carried an origin code Evelyn's team could audit. Evelyn declined Lakefront Meridian only after every required reform was complete. Dante knocked on her open door. The board approved your hiring plan. I know, of course you do. He placed 2 restaurant reservations on her desk. One is public and one is private. Why 2? Because I would like to take you to dinner, and the setting should be your choice. Evelyn studied him. This is not a reward for staying. No. My answer changes nothing at work tomorrow. Nothing. And if I say no, I will see you at the board meeting at 9. Evelyn chose the quiet restaurant and handed him the other reservation. 1 dinner, she said. 1 dinner, Dante agreed. He offered his hand but waited. Evelyn placed her hand in his because she wanted to, not because she owed him loyalty, protection, or gratitude. The system had once assigned her a price without asking who she was. Now she wrote the terms herself. If dignity costs you the place you work to hold together, would you walk away or return only when the power to change it was truly yours?